This is a replica of first century olive press. This is where they make olive oil. When you walked in, you saw kind of how relatively cool it is to be in here compared to outside, even though it's very hot outside. But it's because of the structure, the way it's built. First you see these windows very high up, okay, and maybe one here. It's very close to the ceiling, so what happens to hot air? It goes upward, circulates, goes out, and leaves this room with this cool sensation. Also these stones, they're very large, so they take forever to heat up. So if you touch them, they're still kind of on the cool side from last night, because there's not enough hours in the day to heat them back up, so they kind of think of them as kind of ice cubes, but with a warmer temperature, and they kind of keep this neutral temperature. So, olive oil happens in two main steps. First, in October, November, they harvest the olives, they bring it here, and they dump it in this basin, and this is the crushing step, where they tie a donkey around this harness, or yoke, and then the donkey goes in circles, dragging this 800-kilogram stone, crushing the olives until eventually it becomes paste after about 100 times around. The paste is then inserted in these baskets and the pockets of these baskets, okay? And then it's transferred to the next phase or next step. And that is pressing these baskets. And pressing happens down here. You can follow me and look both ways. This is the same machine. So then they bring the baskets here, and they place them on top of these cisterns here. I think it's exposed there now. All right, so here there's a man-made well, artificial well, okay? And then they place these baskets on top, usually 7 to 10 high, and there's 3 presses. The first press is when they just lay them there, and they let gravity and weight do the magic. That oil that secretes out is the purest oil, it's the freshest oil, that's the virgin oil. That oil is transferred to the temple to light the menorah, or used to anoint kings and prophets. The second and third press is when they start using these big logs of trees, or these big beams of trees hanging by a pulley system, you can see both ways. And then they start releasing and pressing down with this presser here. Okay? So it starts pressing down on the baskets. The second oil that we get is still very good oil. That is used for everyday things like cooking, like making medicine and perfume. So that's the second and third as well. They just put more pressure on it, depending on how much it needs or how much is left in the baskets. So sometimes they tie them with these stones. These are half a ton each. They tie them around this, and then they start squeezing down on them to squeeze to create more pressure on those baskets. This is the third press is when you start getting those skins of the olives to secrete in the juices. So that oil is very foggy, it's very dark, it's brown, almost brown looking. So it's not very good oil. That oil is used to light these small lamps around the homes and structures, or to make olive oil soap. Now, have you guys been to Gethsemane or not yet? No? So Gethsemane is on the Mount of Olives, right? So this is where kind of everything happens there when it comes to olive oil and olives and everything. And Gethsemane in Aramaic is Gat Shmanim. Gat Shmanim means olive press. Okay? So we know Jesus walked into that garden. He prayed how many times? 3 times. 3 presses, 3 times. And when he prayed, was he at ease when he prayed?
Not at all.
No, he was pressured, right? He was under a lot of stress and pressure. So he was pressed 3 times. And then finally, what happened on the third prayer?
He started sweating blood.
Exactly, that's the brown oil we were talking about, right? On the third press. So it's beautiful how the harmony of our everyday lives, what relates to the olive tree, when we saw down there the lineage, right? The prophecy, and then it continues here with the life of Christ. So, and this is not a coincidence. I don't think anyone believes this is a coincidence.
Nothing is a coincidence.
Similar to this one. So if you can imagine, the synagogue was pretty full at the time because people started hearing more and more about Jesus, about his doings, about what he's been talking about and so forth. So the synagogue was full, and he was given, as a guest, the scroll to read from the book of Isaiah, and he started reading. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, For he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom to the prisoners, the recovery of sight to the blind, to set the oppressed free, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. Then he wrote the scroll, gave it to the attendant. The attendant will put it in an urn similar to this one. Urn is transferred to the storage room to protect the scroll from disintegration. And then he sat back down and continued preaching. Then he added, "Today this prophecy is fulfilled with your hearing." The crowd went wild, basically. Just astonished. Their eyes were fixed on Jesus, right? And they started being happy. They got happy. What did this guy say? Did he really claim he's the Messiah? The person we've been waiting on for all this time? They got happy because, keep in mind, God has been quiet for 400 years. They wanted a spark of hope. They wanted someone to remind them or tell them that God is still in touch with His people. So they were happy, but then like all of us human beings, we become a little doubtful, right? We start questioning. No, wait. Isn't this Joseph's kid? Yeah, we know this guy. He used to help us with the grapes and stuff. He can't be the Messiah. Prove it! So they asked Jesus, basically, prove it. So Jesus respectfully declined. He's like, you know what? Not this time. I'm not going to prove it. Nazarenes lack faith, and this is the perfect time to teach Nazarenes about faith. And I'm telling you the same thing. As a Nazarene, it's sad to say that Nazarenes lack faith, much like a lot of people around the world. And when they become doubtful, they start questioning who people are, and they don't care what they become, especially when you're in your own hometown. For example, I've lived in the States for the past 16 years. When you come back, it doesn't matter who you are and what you become. You can be a lawyer, a doctor, an astronaut, a space cowboy. They're still going to know you as the son of so-and-so who used to run into shenanigans here and play soccer in the field and whatever. So they were doubtful, they were angry and upset. They started getting, not upset, but they started questioning him, asking him to prove it. Jesus declined, but he said, "Instead, I'm going to bring you two stories from the books we've been reading and studying all these years in this very building." So, one was about Naaman the Syrian. Naaman the Syrian was a leper. The prophet told him, "Go dip yourself 7 times in the Jordan River and you will be healed." He did it. He was healed, based on faith alone. The second one was about a widow. Remember this one too? She had a little bit of oil, a little bit of flour. She was worried she's not going to survive the famine. The prophet told her, "Feed me and you will survive the famine." She did it. And she survived the famine, based on faith alone. So those stories are supposed to satisfy the crowd, right? Yeah, we get it, Jesus. We jump to conclusions sometimes. Forgive us. Sorry. No, that's not what happened. They were furious with Jesus. How dare you mention stories like that? You could have told us about Daniel, about David, about anybody. Instead, you bring those 2 stories? Why? Gentiles. So you're trying to convince a group or a room full of Jews who are under Roman occupation. Remember that? They don't want to hear anything. They were under Roman occupation. You're here to tell me that I'm supposed to lend a peaceful, loving, caring hand, a hand of salvation to these people outside who were raping us, executing us, killing us all these years, and now I'm supposed to just forget all that? How dare you? No way. So they grabbed him. They wanted to throw him off a cliff. But Jesus escaped, slipped away, left Nazareth, never to return here again. So today, when you leave Nazareth, we're going to give you this lamp, which symbolizes His light that He left with, so you can spread His word and His light, just like He did when He left Nazareth. And possibly, hopefully, tell them how the Bible came to life in front of your eyes today.